Okay, this is week 2 of the 13-week practical program of action for each American descendant of slavery. And my name is Chief Alligator, and I'm going to start off with the 12 steps. Step 1, learn about the estate or estates your family originated from. Step 2, who established that estate. Step 3, what nation and confederacy had jurisdiction over that area prior to the European. Step 4, ask all nonprofit organizations you attend, what's your position on reparations? Step 5, they either support it or they don't. No support, no money. However, if they support it, then immediately children and adults need weekly classes free of charge about steps 1, 2, and 3, and field trips to APOW landmarks in that city, county, and state. Step 6, don't support European holidays for the remainder of the 13-week time frame. Step 7, avoid spending money with any small business that doesn't hire your people, gas stations, nail salons, subways, etc. Step 8, all businesses need operating cash, spend money with American Black businesses. Step 9, all other groups rely on our energy and operating cash to survive, set the trends of making other groups follow our lead and support our clubs, services, products, and entertainment. Step 10, the United States government is bankrupt. The Federal Reserve prints money, i.e. quantitative easing. It also burns money, i.e. quantitative tightening. The US dollar hasn't been backed by gold since Richard Nixon in 1971, the Gold Standard Act. The government operates off the full faith of its citizens to pay debt and taxes. American descendants of slavery no longer have faith in the US government. This is why financial support will be altered, stopped, and redirected. Step 11, teach your kids 1 hour a day about their history on this land. Section A, have them learn about a Black inventor, American inventor. Section B, have them know about our heroes. Section C, they should know the European that conquered the estate you live in. Section D, they should know the nation of people prior to European invasion militarily and culturally. Step 12, practicing these steps will educate us on the land we're claiming, America, and attaches us to the history and laws of the US government. Every estate American descendants of slavery live in should have steps 1, 2, and 3 advertised via social media, radio, and newspaper. This in 13 weeks, 1 fiscal quarter, will bring us together for our common cause. And we're gonna have Chief Quietwater do legal definitions and Dr. Carter G. Woodson quote.
Yep. All righty. So the legal definitions are American, a native of America, descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Number 3, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Number 4, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime. Number 5, school, an institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. Number 6, education, an enlightening experience. And the Dr. Carter G. Woodson quote that I will be reading today is number 2 on our list. Negroes, however, sometimes choose their own leaders, but unfortunately, they are too often the wrong kind. Negroes do not readily follow persons with constructive programs. Almost any sort of exciting appeal or trivial matter presented to them may receive immediate attention and temporarily at least liberal support. When the bubble collapses, of course, these same followers will begin to decry Negro leadership and call these misrepresentatives of the group rascals and scoundrels.
Okay, and Chief Biko, you're going to do the American inventor.
All right, so the American inventor for this week is going to be Frederick McKinley Jones, born May 17th, 1893 in Cincinnati, Ohio. He is the inventor of the air conditioning unit for refrigerated good vehicles. So pretty much those trucks that are transporting grocery goods, frozen items, produce, things of that nature. He is who we credit for that. Before they were using pretty much ice trucks, so large amounts of ice to try to transport these goods across state lines and things of that nature. The U.S. patent is 247584-1A, and he also was granted this this patent on, what is that, July 12th, 1949. He also is credited for the invention of the HVAC unit within vehicles as well.
Okay. And do Americans who descend from that lineage of that individual, do they own and control that business sector for that invention?
They do not.
Okay. All right. And Chief Blackcoat, we have 5 maroon points.
Yes, sir. All right. Maroon historical points was a person escaping slavery, seeking freedom, or breaking the law. Providing unity and a strong defense came first. Maroon leaders were the first and foremost military figures. That's an important one. Maroons established guerrilla warfare, planting sharp sticks in thick grass. And number 5, Maroons knew their European enemies, language, defense, and plans.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and let Chief Akivalan and Chief Blackcoat do their steps 1, 2, and 3, and I'll finish off on my mother's side once they're done.
Okay. Step 1, learn about the state. Okay. I'll go first, Juan, our Chief Abdullah Khan, if you don't want to go first.
I can do it. So my place was Ohio, and the people that were there before colonization was the Shawnee in the specific area that I'm from. It was settled by Robert de La Salle, and the language that they spoke was Algonquian.
What year was that they established the state of Ohio?
Let me double check.
And was that your mother?
1803.
1803? Is that for both your parents or your mother or your father?
Both of my parents.
Okay. Anything you want to add on that based on that information that you found out?
No. That's pretty much it.
All right. What was his name one more time?
Robert de La Salle. Robert DeLaSalle.
Okay. Okay, Chief.
And Shawnee was the language?
No, those are the people.
What was the language?
Algonquian.
How you spell that?
ALGONQUIAN.
Okay.
Okay, and Chief Blackcoat, you're going to share your lineage.
Yes, sir. What's going on? So pretty much I come from Georgia, born and raised here, lived in the city of Atlanta, but my family comes from the backwoods of Savannah. So pretty much we're gonna get into that history. Georgia being established, the state being established by James Oglethorpe and 114 colonists. They arrived in Savannah. The people at that time were called the Yamasee or the Creek. They dominated the Georgia region. Tomatichi was pretty much the chief over the land of Georgia, and he pretty much gave that land to James Oglethorpe to pretty much settle in and create a buffer state or create the city of Savannah. Again, Georgia was established in 1733 by James Oglethorpe. The languages spoken that was common in the region was Chickasaw and Choctaw. Many other languages, hundreds, but many of them were lost. But those are the 2 dominant ones. I have a map here to pretty much show the region I'm speaking of. Effingham, Scriven, Chatham, that's pretty much where my family lineage comes from on my mother's side. My father's side comes from Ohio. That's why I was paying quite close attention to our last presentation. But Scriven, Effingham, and Chatham is that region where that's pretty much Savannah. This is Savannah pretty much. James Oglethorpe landed on this port here. It's huge if you ever visit down there. They keep expanding it over and over again, called River Street. But yeah, that's pretty much the area. Sorry about that. The Confederacy, which was You can go with Muskogee or the Muskogee Creek Confederacy or the Creek Confederacy, which they kind of considered the Lower Creek. The Lower Creek, I'm guessing, would be considered how we're in the southern part of Georgia down here near the coast. And yeah, again, Yamakron and Cherokee, those are the nations pretty much dominating that area. Right here's a picture of James Oglethorpe having a meeting with Tomachichi, a drawing, a description of, you know, whenever they landed and probably making a business deal or however that situation went down for James Oglethorpe to establish Georgia. Down here is that pretty much the Bendelor. This is pretty much the colors, the Creek Nation or the Lower Creek Nation from the Lower Creek Nation, Yamakron, Cherokee. This is their Bendelor. Pretty much their colors, what they wore. They had pockets. You can carry around things, whatever they want to keep on their daily persons, but they recognize each other by their symbols, colors, and you know how they wore the Bendelors. And that'll be my piece on Georgia.
Okay. One question for Chief Akibaline. What Confederacy was the state of Ohio in? That's the one thing that I noticed that Chief Blackcoat mentioned that he didn't get from Ohio.
The Native Confederacy?
Correct.
They were a part of the, they were under the Iroquois Confederacy. The Iroquois came in and pushed out a lot of the tribes that were there, including the Shawnee. So that's who was there before colonization.
So that was part of the Iroquois Confederacy. All right. Good job, everybody. I'm gonna finish up on my mom's side. I did my father last week. On my mom's side, let me share my screen real quick.
I'm stepping away for 5 minutes. I'm coming right back. I need to grab a charger.
Okay. All right. So General James Oglethorpe also established the city of Augusta. So on my mom's side of the family, that bloodline goes back to the city of Augusta. Again, General James Oglethorpe established the city of Savannah and the city of Augusta. The Confederacy is the Creek Confederacy prior to European occupation. Augusta was founded in 1736. It's the second capital of the estate known as Georgia. The city became the capital. Augusta became the capital in 1785 and remained the capital until 1795. Augusta is also named after Princess Augusta, the mother of King George III. All right. The nations that were in that area, Chickasaw, Creek, Yuchi, and Shawnee were in that area, along with the Yamacraw and Cherokee. What's interesting is each nation spoke a different language. So the Chickasaw, their language was Muskegon. The Creek, which are also can be called the Muskegee, they also spoke Muskegon. So Chickasaw and Creek spoke the same language. The Yuchi, they had their own language, which is Yuchi. The Shawnee, they spoke the Algonquin. So as Chief Akibaline mentioned in Ohio, we also know Shawnee was also in that southeast region of Georgia, and the language is the same. And then you also had the Cherokee Nation in that area, which spoke the Iroquoian language, which, as Chief Akibaline just mentioned, Ohio, which is going to be on this map. Okay, so Ohio is here. So we can see that the Cherokee, which are predominantly known for this area, they spoke the language of the Iroquois Confederacy, which is pretty much the northeast region, which is where the Pilgrims or the Europeans first came in contact with Virginia or North America. A side note, the nation of Cherokee also warred against the European in the Georgia area, or for the territory and what's now known as the estate of Georgia. And the name of that war was called the Cherokee War. And so that's pretty much that on my mother's side. I want to bring back.
What was the name of that war again, Chief Alligator?
The Cherokee War.
Cherokee War, thank you.
Yep. And so what I would like to do now is bring us straight into, bear with me real quick. All right, so we'll go straight into the Militia Act. The Militia Act is going to be vital to understand once we start getting into these wars. We're going to hear a lot of terms like Patriot, Tennessee Volunteer, and we need to understand historically what those words mean to Europeans. So who wants to start off the Militia Act of November 25th, 1755?
Go ahead and start off.
All right.
All right. Beginning December 1754, Governor Morris had repeatedly asked the Assembly to pass a bill providing for the establishment and discipline of a provincial military force, but the House had always either ignored the request or had evaded a definite answer. In a message on November 3rd, he had pointed out that while he had been issuing commissions to such as were willing to take them, he had been unable because of the lack of militia law to form the people into such regular bodies as the present exigencies requires. Within the next few days, the Assembly received several petitions, both from Philadelphia and from the exposed frontiers, asking specifically for a militia act or for the forts and garrisons.
Okay, you want to go into a little detail and build on what you just read?
Yeah. So basically here, it seems as though they are requesting an act to pretty much form or allow people to pretty much arm themselves to pretty much defend themselves from the actual Americans. It looks like here they didn't have anything that was established or any acts in place that would make it lawful for them to do such thing. And it seems like they're trying to get this passed so that they may pretty much start having militias to protect themselves against the Americans who are pretty much trying to fend off the European from their land.
Okay, anybody else want to build on that?
I guess because there was a lack of militia law, I guess they hadn't had everything established to be able to have something formally since the House never basically gave them an answer on how to move forward with it, I'm assuming. If that makes sense.
Okay. Let's look at the date here. We see 1754. And so we understand that the European established their government, the United States, on 1776. So we see that this is prior to the United States government, number one. Number two, they are organized, as you just mentioned, Chief Quietwater, because this Governor Morris has repeatedly asked the Assembly to pass a bill providing for the establishment and discipline of a military force, right? So they're organized. Let's look at where we are in 2021. We don't have that kind of structure as prisoners of war, right?
Right.
Right. So we can see that even before they formed their own government, they were organized, even at the colony level. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that sticks out to me is asking specifically for a militia act or for forts and garrisons, right? So I would like to ask Chief Blackcoat, why a militia act? Do you believe that why through a militia act can they get forts and garrisons? Why can't they get it prior to a militia act?
Repeat your question one more time.
This part that's highlighted right here where it says that they were asking specifically for a militia act or for forts and garrisons.
Correct.
Right. So if you can just kind of explain to us the power of a fort or a garrison. What's the difference between a fort and a garrison?
Well, right now it sounds like, they need help. Sounds like a lot of help is needed. They need bodies. So he's like, and like the highlighted part says, asking specifically for militia, which we understand what a militia is, and then an act for forts or garrison. Forts are pretty much buffer grounds to, hold the fort down, and then garrisons are just bases. Bases are your Fort Carsons, your Fort Bennings, your Fort Braggs, your Fort Sam. So those are just the entire bases, and then forts are just little small forts. And if you get into contact, you got a fort somewhere to retreat back to. It's important if you want to maintain. If you're trying to conquer someone's land or someone's ground or someone's territory, you're gonna need all three of those. You're gonna need a fort, militia, and well, for this time, this is before the military, was established, so they have militias. You're gonna need that in order to pretty much trying to defeat that group of people to take on that land. So those three things are very potent to establishing a military and pretty much doing whatever the conquest was, whatever they uh, conquer, whatever territory they wanted to conquer. They're asking for that help. So it's important. They wanted to pretty much take over the America, and establish grounds here, and they needed all three of those. Those are big pieces to pretty much take over a state.
Okay, Chief Akibalan, you want to build on that?
I really disagree with everybody else said. It seems like they're kind of just setting up a play to start the militia to get ready for everything that they need in terms of conquering the land.
Okay. You want to keep reading, Chief Rico?
Yeah, I can go ahead and continue.
All right.
As fears of American attacks increased, pressure on the assembly grew until Wednesday, November 19th. By the leave of the House, Benjamin Franklin, a member of the House, brought in a bill entitled An Act for the Better Ordering and Regulating the Military Force of the Province, which was read the first time, and ordered to lie on the table for perusal of the members. This was one of the rare occasions during these years when an important bill originated with an individual member rather than with a committee. The next afternoon, the measure was considered, and after considerable time spent therein, was referred to a committee of 6, including Franklin, for the alteration and amendment. The following morning, November 21st, with an alteration made in the title and other unspecific amendments, the bill was again considered, and in the afternoon it was passed, with 4 strict Quakers recording their dissent. On Saturday morning, the 22nd, Governor Morris informed the House that although it contained many things of a very extraordinary nature, and he was convinced it would never answer the purpose of defending the province, he was willing to assent to it rather than enter into any dispute. The formal enactment took place on Tuesday, November 25th, only 5 legislative days after the introduction of the bill. So pretty much what I got from this is that we see be voted upon. So this was very rare in the case that it was brought to the table as well as accepted within a short time frame. What they say, 5 days. And also they mentioned that this was pretty much just given by one person. This wasn't a committee. This is definitely something that Ben Franklin was trying to push and ended up getting approval on. It seems like whoever the House or this governing House was, they were very hesitant and pessimistic about this bill actually doing anything as far as preventing the attacks on these territories or this colony or province. So it seems like they were hesitant to pass it, but they just passed it just seemingly just because they had no other answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like there was a sense of urgency because it was so much pressure on the assembly, which made them kind of rush into actually passing it in such a short period of time.
it seemed like there wasn't a lot of like checks and balances either. Like it didn't seem like they had to go through a process. It was more so just like one person giving the bill, and they had a committee, but it didn't seem like it had to go through different houses and stuff to get passed. So I think like that made a big difference back then when they were trying to get things passed, and how they set up everything so quickly when they were trying to colonize and like take over stuff, because they didn't really have, they had, I guess, like a common law between each other, but it didn't seem like they really had like set laws.
Yeah, the temperature is just rising for this group of people trying to take over some territory. I also wanted to add another part about Garrison. Garrison is training facility also. So they're asking for land to train these people to fight the Indians off. They're asking for everything possible to pretty much win this war.
Okay, I got two definitions if somebody can look it up. This one, exigency, and this one, perusal. I didn't see it in my Black's Law Dictionary, so if one of y'all could pull up a legal definition browser. The first thing that jumps out to me in this paragraph is this first sentence right here. As fear of, and of course we want to throw away the word Indian because they're Americans, but as fear of American attacks increased, pressure on the assembly grew until Wednesday, November 19th. That says a lot to me because here we are, what, this was 1755, so 1855, 1955, so a little over 200 years later, how do these people who are writing a letter saying that they're in fear of American attacks, how now are they the American? How have they, over 200, a little over 240 some years, how are they now claiming to be the American when their militia, right, in today's time, Proud Boys, 3%ers, whatever their militia names are, here's proof of claim that they were trying to get permission to assemble a militia to protect themselves on foreign ground. Now, 240 years later, these same people are still in our birthright calling themselves American.
Correct. Correct. Seems like they don't know what the actual invention of the militia was for, to actually protect themselves from the Americans, and not vice versa or anything like that.
All right.
I can see how this could cause a lot of confusion in today's time.
Exactly.
Right. It's, I mean, so where are you with that? If you just made a statement on that, just in that first sentence, how are we living in a time when people are basically they're stealing birthright? They're claiming to be something that they're historically not. Each one of y'all want to build on that real quick before we go to the next paragraph?
I'm in there first at the beginning of the paragraph. As fears of Indians attacks, which we know Indians are being, that's the American. As fears of American attacks increased, pressure on the assembly grew until on Wednesday, November 20th. So, you know, this group of people are afraid of the Americans.
Right.
You're terrified. You don't even want to be, you know, everything about these people, you know, put fear in your boots. So for them to come out today, or, you know, however long ago when they started claiming to be the American, you know, you kind of just, it's kind of like, you know, wanting to be your enemy or wanting to be something you totally are against. So, like I said, I can see why that will cause a lot of confusion.
Anyone else want to build on that?
Shoot, I think you made a good point when you were saying pretty much stolen identity or claiming to be something that they historically aren't. We've seen that, I'll probably say, in the last 20 years, of a lot of different preferences being noted in the law, like, hey, I want to be classified as a woman, but historically you've been known as a male because you have male parts. Like, it's kind of like in that same line or same vein,
Same type of thing.
you know, same type of thing. And we can see, like, just from this, how that all connects, of how different classifications, the different renaming processes, and then of course the rewriting of history, you can cause confusion that will last for centuries.
And people don't know because they're not reading documents like this, and this is in black and white. So it's here, the information is here. It's just the lack of knowledge and the lack of where to find the knowledge or the literature or the documents that you need to get a clear idea of what has took place and transpired. Fast forward to today, like you said, the reclassification of just human beings, period.
All right, and you see what the school has done to us. The indoctrination, the schooling of the Negro. You schooled us out, or this group of people out of who they truly were, and now you're teaching this new group of people that they're that group of people
Right.
that was pretty much washing you at a certain point in time when you were touching the land. So again, I like how Chief Alligator sometimes saying we're going into, la la land, Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory. Everybody can just pick and choose what they want to be,
Right.
what candy you want, anything. So Jordan, our Chief Biko, he hit on that. Today's time you can pretty much choose your gender. You can identify as whatever you want. And this definitely gravitates from this. It definitely does, because you have a group of Europeans, British or Irish now claiming to be the American one. That's
Right. Even with that new critical, well, it's not new, but what is it? The critical race theory, how they're pushing so hard for that. And that's the exact same thing, is trying to erase history. And people go along with it. And the generations above, ahead of us, or behind us rather, is going to be the same thing, hopefully, for them, unless more people wake up and start doing their own research and reading factual documents.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about this critical race theory, and they definitely are pushing it. So that's why I ignored it.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say,
not going to entertain that because we're not dealing in theory, we deal in facts. So you're right. The idea that they
Right.
want you to go into their make-believe world, I don't play, we're not playing those games. But I will say this, I don't know what show this was when we were younger. If you tell one lie, it leads to another. And so that's where we are now. They keep lying. Right now they're lying about their birthright. And now they want you to lie about your gender. And at some point you get off the merry-go-round and say, you know what, y'all do whatever y'all want. We need to have our own. And y'all can play Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory all you want.
Correct.
Somebody else want to start reading?
I can. We're right here. Okay. In the view of the Assembly's longstanding refusal to create any sort of military force for Pennsylvania, the passage of this measure was clearly something of an achievement. That it fell far short of providing militia system the governor and his supporters consider adequate is equally clear. The change in its title emphasized the fact that its provisions were merely permissive and in no sense compulsory. In framing the bill, Franklin had drawn heavily on his experience in proposing and promoting the Association of 1747. The military units contemplated in both schemes were purely voluntary, and in both the officers, though commissioned by the governor, were purely voluntary, and in both the officers, those commissioned by the governor, were commissioned by the governor, were to be elected from below, not appointed from above. Okay. The most important difference was that in 1747, the association was a completely extra legal body created by the volunteers themselves, while in 1755, the military units were, for the first time in Pennsylvania history, to be established by formal legislative act. And during the 11 months before news of its disallowance by the king reached the colony, the act did serve, in spite of its limitations, as a basis for raising reserve forces for provincial defense. Let me see here.
And just so I can pull it up on my phone, which document is this in the email?
This is the Military Act of 1755.
So it seems because they kind of rushed with everything, they didn't have everything in order, where it says that it fell short of providing a militia system that the governor and his supporters consider adequate or equally clear. So it seemed like everything just wasn't as clear as it should have been, probably because they rushed to enforce it and to sign off on it.
I was gonna say something else or add on to that. It seems like they were this was more so like a voluntary type of thing here. It wasn't like anything written in the law when it says permissive and in no sense compulsory. Especially I guess when they said they changed the title of the provision.
Right.
That made it such. So like Chief Quietwater saying is still very hesitant to even like do anything with this particular act.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Moving forward, let's try to do no more than 2 to 3 sentences at a time. That way you can kind of break down what it is. I like this part right here, where it says the most important difference was that in 1747, the association was a completely extra legal body created by the volunteers themselves. So the militiamen themselves created their own structure. While in 1755, the military units were, for the first time in Pennsylvania history, to be established by formal legislative act. So they had already created their own legal structure outside of what their Congress was doing, right? And it says, and during the 11 months before news of its disallowance by the king, okay? I think we can park right here and turn the music up and ponder on this in 2021. We're in the same exact situation that they were in with their king from Europe, right? Because anything they did, they had to get permission from Europe.
Right.
So they're saying, hey, we want our own, we need a militia, right? We can't wait on the military to come, right? Because when they pull up, it's going down so quick.
Right. They're not just to form that militia, right?
Right. We need to be able to mobilize and organize within our own little townships or villages or whatever have you. And the king shot that down. Fast forward to 2021, we're prisoners of war. We don't have any defense. Our defense is relying on slave patrol.
Correct.
Y'all see that?
That's the probably
we're
biggest difference. Now I was gonna say that's probably the biggest difference while they're waiting on Europe, British, Great Britain rather, to come over and help, fight against the Americans. We are pretty much attacked from both sides. We don't have anybody to even try to call on to, so we have to do everything in-house, whether we get permission or not.
Right, and just to add on to that, Chief Biko, we see the no justice, no peace, right? It's like a 1-2 step with this group of people. They'll march and they'll rally and then they'll bring out a preacher. It's like you're out of order with the way the world works, right? When it comes to violence, right? If there's violence being enacted, that's not people. You follow me? That's where your militia would come in or your defense. So it just kind of it shows a glaring, to me, it's putting a spotlight on where we are in 2021. We're not organized. We don't have any kind of self-defense, right? And then in number 2, we're not even petitioning the government to have our own defense.
And that was going to lead into my next question. Could prisoners of war ask the government to form their own militias? Could we do the same thing this group of people was doing, asking their king, hey man, help us out? Could we do that same thing at home from our government? I doubt it, but that's a good question. Never mind. We're gonna,
I mean, if somebody wants to build on that question that you just asked, I would say no. I would say, why would you want to petition the government, right? That's benign and neglecting you and enslaving your group of people. right? And lumping you in through wordplay with
Right.
with other groups, right?
Why
Your
would you ask for
minority,
anything?
yeah, your people of color, you
Right.
don't want to talk directly to this group of people. And,
Right.
and
Right.
what we factually know now is the reason why they never talk directly to our group is because we are the American.
Right. We had to separate, break all that up, create that illusion first.
Right.
Chief Akibalon or Chief Biko, y'all want to build on that?
No, I think y'all hitting everything on the head. I'm just listening to what y'all saying.
Yeah, I have to agree. Shoot, no point of asking them, can we do something when we've seen they've already been neglecting us for other things much smaller. So it'll probably be a waste of energy anyway.
Okay, I'll jump on this one. An act for the better ordering and regulating such as are willing and desirous to be united for military purposes within this province. Whereas this province was first settled by, and a majority of the assemblies have ever since been, of the people called Quakers, who, though they do not, as the world is now circumstanced, condemn the use of arms and others, yet are principled against bearing arms themselves, and to make any law to compel them thereto against their consciousness would not only be to violate a fundamental in our Constitution and be a direct breach of our Charter of Privileges, but would also in effect be to commence persecution against all that part of the inhabitants of the province. So here we see that the people called the Quakers from Europe established this province, and they don't, based on their religious beliefs or their traditional practices, they don't believe in arming themselves. But what they're saying is we don't have anything against anybody else, right, that wants to bear arms. So basically, if you want to fight and protect me, I don't have a problem with that, but I got a problem if you're telling me I got to fight for myself. So that's kind of where the Quakers are. And that says that right here, yet are principled against bearing arms themselves, and to make any law to compel them thereto against their conscience would not only be to violate a fundamental in our Constitution and be a direct breach of our Charter of Privileges. So that sticks out to me as well. Again, they were sent over here with certain privileges. So how can you be sent over here and now you've turned around in 246 years and now you're claiming to be the American? Anybody else want to build on that?
That was probably the privilege. That was that privilege that came with it.
Exactly.
You know, you get to claim that new land, this new world. That's that whole thing. You know, they pretty much set them up to not to become the American, but to pretend to be the American. You know, wipe
And that's what they stand on to this day.
Oh yeah.
And they keep saying our, like you can tell that they're just talking about something that they had between each other instead of saying the Constitution, they said our. So you can see that it's just between a specific group of people.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because like you said, this is what, 1747 to 1755, that predates the U.S. Constitution. And then, like you said, it's this breach of our charter. A charter is like a privilege given by a country. So we know they haven't established a said country yet. So who is this? Who is this charter given by? Like we keep going back, it's by the Great Britain, pretty much, or any of those European countries.
Right. And just a side note on Benjamin Franklin, he was a general. And so most of these rulers from Europe, they sent warlords over here. Okay. And those warlords are honored on their fiat currency, on what we call money. But if you look at all the presidents on their currency, all of them are warlords. They're killers, except for Lincoln. Lincoln is the only lawyer on United States government money. Everybody else was a general. So Ben Frank sent over here as a general. Yeah, he's got direct communication with the king, right? And he's saying, hey, I need other groups of people. Besides the men that you sent me, I need other groups of people, right? And I think we need to look at that structure as well. How the king never came over here from England and signed anything with chiefs on this land, right? They always sent their animals. They sent their warlords to handle business. And I'm saying that to say that historically, if we're going to reverse engineer that and get freedom, why do we have preachers and politicians in the negotiating room for us? That's where you have defense. That's where you have some type of defense to negotiate your terms, right?
Right.
Correct.
I mean,
Correct.
that's what they did.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Like you said, you would usually send an ambassador or somebody of that nature if you're going to try to make deals with other countries or other people. But in this case, they sent, like you said, their military generals, their warlords and that thing. And that in itself should tell like, hey, they weren't here to make deals. They're here to take over. You know what I'm saying? If you're trying to make a deal, you would have any contract, you want to say, oh, let me have my lawyer read over this. Not let me have my bodyguard read over this.
Right.
Something like that.
Exactly. So I'll pick back up. It says, and for them by any law to compel others to bear arms and exempt themselves would be inconsistent and partial. Yet for as much as by the general toleration and equity of our laws, great numbers of people of other religious denominations are come among us, who are under no such restraint, some of whom have been disciplined in the art of war and consistently think it their duty to fight in defense of their country. And so what we see here based on this is the Quakers just saying, we're not fighting. Quakers are saying it's against our religion to bear arms. But they're also recognizing there's other religious denominations that have come among us who are under no such restraint, some of whom have been disciplined in the art of war, right? So here they're coming to an agreement. They're saying, look, we got the non-violent of us, which every group of people has, right? You got non-violent nations that were on this land under confederacies. They're saying, hey, we're not the fighters. But there's enough other tribes or enough other groups of them, can't call them tribes because that's not how they operate, but there's enough other groups, religious groups around these Quakers that are like, yeah, we have our personal relationship with our God, but yeah, we'll fight. And so a question we can bring that back to us as prisoners of war, why don't we have these kind of talks? Somebody
Say,
else?
why don't we?
Yeah, why don't we? Like everybody doesn't have to be, clearly everybody is not with the nonviolent movement, right?
Right.
Like the media always portrays this one little clip of King's life, like we're all with this. The majority of us are not, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
okay if you're a part of that, that's fine. But take the temperature of everybody else in the group.
Right.
Other people in the group may be with defending their country.
Right.
But
Yeah.
y'all can build on that. Where y'all at?
I agree with what you said, that, yeah, everyone is not going to fight, but they could definitely play a role in whatever, wherever they can fit in at.
Correct.
In today's time, we just got, it's a lot of individuals. So they've broken this up so much. We went from, tribes, nations, confederacy,
Right.
and now we're so divided apart. Now we're leaving single mom homes, or what's it called, child care services. We're just, this group of people is divided so much, too many opinions, and so we can't really right now in this time, we can and we have, but when it's most important, it's kind of stagnant when it's time to come together and go for a real cause. Too many people feel like yes and no when everybody kind of at this point, prisoners of war should be on the same page. But
And it's like everyone is wanting and fighting for the same thing, but everyone has their own lane that they're in instead of everyone being in the same lane to accomplish the common goal.
All right, you can go as deep as, you have your college degree people, then you have your workers, then you have your technical school people. It's so many groups now, and it's, that common cause is always, kind of far-fetched right now today.
Anybody else want to build on that? Chief Biko, Chief Akibaline?
I would say, yeah, there's definitely different denominations of different, I guess, schools of thought to say it. definitely have those peacemakers, but the same thing, as all the other chiefs has been saying pretty much today, it still has to have that common goal. Yeah, you may not be the one, or that may not be your discipline to pick up the gun, but whatever your discipline is, go ahead and make sure you get, that group of people to create something that's going to be beneficial for the group entirely. So your
I like
discipline
that.
may be creating laws. Okay, you're not picking up a gun, so you and your group create the laws so that it will be protected underneath this when we do have to pick up the guns, if that is, another discipline. It
Preacher.
seems like everybody's, the preacher can be beneficial, but like you said, we put the preacher in front of the camera to quiet the soul, make peace, instead of using
Being
it
truthful.
how they used it, as far as like empowering the people. You see, they use their preachers and their religion to say, okay, we have our God's back to fight for what we want. We seem to use it as we have our God has our back. So when we get to him, we'll have,
Right, right.
peace and
Mm,
paradise. Like we
Yeah,
have to wait till we are perished before we do anything, instead of like, no, God has told us it's our time to fight, type of thing. Like the preacher can be used in a positive way, but we haven't engineered it that way, or it's not been engineered that way for us, and we haven't done anything to
Right,
change
right.
it.
Chief Akibalan.
I agree with Biko just said, to look at it by saying that we need to be empowered rather than waiting for stuff after we die. And I also agree with the fact that we have to have a common goal. Like we can all have separate lanes and everything, but we have to have at least one thing in common, which is like the destination. And we have to also have a plan on how to get there. And we need to be able to collectively come together and strategize on how to get there, instead of like it's being 100 different plans and we all go to 100 different plans, and there's really no common goal when you have 100 different plans.
yeah, the destination. I like that. I like how you said that.
And this part right here, where I'm gonna pick back up at, it says numbers of people of other religious denominations are come among us, who are under no such restraint, some of whom have been disciplined in the art of war, and contentiously think it their duty to fight in defense of their country. So they think that it's their country, their wives, their families, and estates, and such have an equal right to liberty of conscience with others. And that ties into what Chief Akibalan and Chief Biko just said. We have to understand that we are the American. So to go back to what Chief Akibalan just said, what's the plan? Your land. Your parents are buried in this land. Your grandparents are buried in this land. Your great-grandparents are buried in this land. And it's like, as long as they got us off kilter with religion, through entertainment, right? Anything to make us not look at the reality that we have generations of people buried in this land. Why aren't we claiming it?
right.
When you got other people coming from other places willing to die for foreign land.
Cognitive
Wow.
dissonance.
I think
Nah, that was a great point. Great point.
I'm gonna pick up here and see what we can push through a little bit more tonight. It says, and whereas a great number of petitions from the several counties of this province have been presented to this House, setting forth that the petitioners are very willing to defend themselves and their country, and desirous of being formed into regular bodies for that purpose, instructed and disciplined under proper officers with suitable and legal authority, representing with all that unless measures of this kind are taken so as to unite them together, subject them to due command, and thereby give them confidence in each other, they cannot assemble to oppose the enemy. And so that's kind of what Chief Akibalan and Chief Biko were just saying. This is their common bond.
Right.
Their common bond is to come together to oppose the enemy, which is our ancestors. That they were able to put their religious differences aside and all of that and say, look, the people of America are our enemy. So to answer Chief Akibalan's question and Chief Biko's question, we as Americans, first we got to realize we're American, right? And that's just by honoring your grandparents and your great grandparents, right? Just recognizing where they're from. If they're buried in this land and you are American, The next thing would be, okay, you got to identify who's your enemy.
Right.
So I would ask y'all that question, looking at what they decided to do, where they got to in order to form their militia. They felt like if we don't, then these Americans are going to basically annihilate us. So in 2021, we're all prisoners of war as far as their survival under this government and on this land. Based on what we just saw, how they came to their conclusion of why they're going to organize.
I think it goes back to what we all just said in regards to us not having a common, everyone sees what we're going through, but again, we don't have that commonality in regards to getting to the end solution of our issues. So I think it goes back to what we all just said in regards to coming together and being on one page with each other to get through and over to the end and see some change, some clear change.
Anybody else want to build on that?
What was the question?
Based on how they came together, they basically came together to oppose the enemy, which is this little section highlighted right here. So that's the part that they rallied around to defeat the Americans. So why can't our goal be just that simple?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. It seems like we try to make it or overcomplicate it.
Right.
I think last year was a good example of how not overcomplicating it, how easily it is to assemble, with the different formations that we had. I think that was a good example of how just making it as simple as possible, how it can gather pretty much everybody. Everybody just has that one common thought. You have different religious people, different practices of religion, but that was put on the wayside because everybody's there for one common goal. So it can be done. I think we just have to put on the blinders to everything else as far as the distractions, like you said, whether it be entertainment, the religious belief. We have to put on the blinders to that and say, okay, what is our common goal and what are we trying to do? And we can get it done. We can get it done.
I'm not going to get political with it. I'm going to just say this. My bad, Chief Akiva. I'm just going to make this one statement. We're scared. We don't want to really say who the enemy is. We're scared. Nobody really wants to say that this European has been giving us problems for 400 years, 401 and a half years. And we don't want to acknowledge that that's our enemy. But they were acknowledging who we were to them in 1755. So we're scared. But go ahead, Chief Akiva.
I was about to say, also, I feel like we have to, even if we don't have the same exact goal with even if we don't have the same exact goal, we have to have some common goal, many common goals that just deal with progression in general. Everything doesn't have to be the same exact goal, but I feel like we focus a lot of times on the bad things that we do, or like the bad things that, like, specifically in the media, we'll take each other and we'll pull each other down. But like if a white or European person does something, a lot of times their community doesn't tear that person down. And it's like when you get in trouble in the store or something with your parents, like they don't beat you in front of their company or in front of their friends. They like wait, because it's like you don't want to embarrass that person. So I feel like we need to take that approach when doing things. Like sometimes we just don't know things, and there's still a lot of ignorant people. So I feel like we have to take steps back sometimes and kind of teach each other rather than trying to pull each other down when it comes to the things that a lot of us know or some of us know and things that the other people don't know.
I'd agree with that. But definitely, like you said, Chief Alligator, I think a lot of people are afraid to say who the enemy is. Like you said, they weren't afraid to say who their enemy was, and they weren't afraid to rename them as well, probably to make it easier. Naming them Indian, just so we can make sure when we become Americans, we don't have to even think about it. They were Indians. They're not Americans. We're Americans. So if we need
Indians come from India.
Exactly. So if we need to reclassify it just to make it easier for ourselves, then damn it, do it. Like you said, we have all different names: Devil, Cracker, whatever you want to call it, as far as you to get yourself in that mindset of how they were when they were setting up this militia act, because that's exactly what they did. You saw in one of these paragraphs it said fought, defended themselves in their country. Their country is in Europe, but they still were fanatical enough about this land where they made it their country. They made themselves the Americans, and they pretty much created their own enemy and decided to destroy that enemy as well. So we see how it can be done, but like you said, I think a lot of us are afraid to just say it and actually action on it.
All right, we'll stop right here. We're at the 8 o'clock mark. If you can make a note, Chief Quiet Water. So we'll start back in confidence in each other next week. Yeah, that's pretty much what we're seeing right now. Just to piggyback on what Chief Biko said, we have to understand that when they left Europe, they left a structure that they couldn't excel in that structure. If their parents were peasants and they had you were a peasant, right? You were born into your social status. So in their mind, they got a chance to live their best life coming to this new land. And by hell or high water, they weren't going back to Europe. That was their mindset. If you want to take anything positive from them, they weren't going back to Europe. They were going to make the best out of where they were sent, right? It just happened to be inside of our house. So we got people sitting on our sofa in our living room, and we don't even know it's our house. The majority of us, we don't know it's our house. Anybody want to say anything in closing before we
I think everybody said it. I honestly do. Chief of Cubulon said something that was important. We're all in that same boat. So that common goal, that common thought, that destination, we're on that boat right now. We all have that one common goal, that one common thought, that destination. We're just not aware enough or educated enough to know how to move about it.
Right.
So yeah, I think we all said it, and next week we're gonna definitely pick up on it.
Shoot, I would just like to give the definition to that. Exigency is pretty much an urgent need or demand. And then I believe it was perusal. That's just like reading something or reading like a subject matter or something like that.
Okay, what's the definition of exigency again?
Exigency is an urgent need or demand. So I think that's what they were saying when they was like an urgent need for the militia.
Gotcha.
And you said perusal?
Perusal, correct.
And what was that?
That was like reading, like to read something. Make sure perusal.
Like to peruse through something? Like to scan or something like that?
Correct. The action of reading or examining something.
I'm looking for the word. I think that was in the second paragraph. I'll do the American Inventor next week. Who wants to do the steps?
I can go ahead and read the steps.
I can do the 12 steps like that.
Oh, you got it?
You want to? It don't matter if you go. I'll do it. You can do it.
You can get the steps. I'll do the quote, Dr. Woodson quote.
The Woodson quote. Got it.
Okay. And who's gonna do the maroon points? You want to do it, Chief of Keep a Line?
So what?
You want to do the maroon points?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so Biko, what are you doing? I'm sorry.
The Dr. Woodson quote.
Okay.
And you've got where we stopped at for next week?
Yes.
Was that the third paragraph?
Yeah.
2, 3. All right.
4.
And Alligator, Chief Alligator, what are you doing next week?
I will be doing the American Inventor.
Okay. All right.